Greetings and welcome. We now are in Hamlet Act 5, and our objective now for the hour is to try to finish with our observations from this classic play. And we already made the observation that in Act 5, Hamlet moves from a distance away from death with every step going closer and closer. When Hamlet meets the skull of Yorick, and he holds it up, and he begins to speak to it, he says something quite fascinating. I'm in 5:1, and we're at roughly line 205 or so like that. Hamlet's holding up, Mr. Durant, this skull of this court jester, this clown, this comic named Yorick. He's the guy who always came to the party. He got the most drunk and did the craziest things, and everybody laughed at him. He was that kind of guy. And he's holding his head in his hand. And he says to Yorick, "Where be your jibes now? Where are your jokes?" Right? Where's your jokes now? Your jambles, your songs, your flashes of merriment that were wont to set the table on a roar. Not one now to mock your own grinning, quite chap fallen. In other words, you don't have any skin left on your face to show that you're smiling. It's over. But then, notice, Frederick, Hamlet says something quite fascinating. Speaking to the head, the skull, the human skull. Look what he says next. And again, I'm roughly at line 206, 7, somewhere in there. I'm on page what? 270. Look what he says next. He speaks to the skull and he says, "Now get you to my lady's chamber and tell her, let her paint on an inch thick. To this favor she must come." Make her laugh at that. Whoa, whoa, whoa. What did you just read? First of all, he says to the skull, "I need you to go and send a message to somebody. Go to my girl's bedroom. My lady's chamber." What girl could he be referencing here? Well, obviously we could say Gertrude, his mama, but there's some sense that he's actually talking about the girl who he asked. Are you beautiful? Are you honest? Mr. Keeley, what's ironic about the fact that Hamlet says, "Hey, skull, you need to go to my girl's bedroom and tell her to put on the makeup really thick, an inch thick, as a matter of fact, kind of like Elizabeth with her eggshell, because this is what she gets to come to. It doesn't matter how drop-dead gorgeous you are, this is what you're going to end up looking like, a skull without any skin on it." He says, "Get to my girlfriend's bedroom and tell her that." What's ironic about that fact?
She's already dead.
Where is he standing?
Right next to her.
He's standing next to her lady's chamber.
Yeah.
Right? He's standing next to her chamber. He's standing next to Ophelia's bedroom for eternity now, right? In other words, there's some dark, dark irony here as he says, "You need to go tell my girl this is what she's going to look like, someday." Of course, someday will be just in a few months, because poor Ophelia, well, look who comes up next onto the stage. They see a procession coming. They hide behind some shrubs, Hamlet and Horatio do, and onto the stage will come the full entourage. This will mirror the entourage of 1-2, when Claudius and all of his entourage came onto the stage, only now they are in sad mourning, they are carrying a body. It will take Hamlet several minutes before he finally figures out they're burying Ophelia. That's why they're here. The way he knows it is when Laertes, Ophelia's brother, jumps into the grave with Ophelia and grabs her, showing a moment of pathos or pity. He's mourning the death of his sister. At that point, Hamlet's like, "No way. Ophelia's dead?" He comes out from hiding, and now we have this moment where Laertes is ready to kill Hamlet. So he will actually grab Hamlet by the throat. Of course, Laertes will believe, to some degree rightfully so, that Ophelia is now dead because of Hamlet. You could make that argument on one count, for sure. It will be at this point that Hamlet will say out loud, "I loved Ophelia." And it will be at this point, then, that we realize that Hamlet and Ophelia were in fact lovers. And she probably did go nuts because she assumed that Hamlet had left her, abandoned her, And of course, she had no father and no brother anymore because the brother was gone as well, and she lost her mind, 5-2. Hamlet will now, in a series of quick scenes, step closer and closer towards his own death. He will begin by telling Horatio how he ended up being on the ship, looking at the letter that Rosencrantz and Guildenstern were carrying. One night he snuck into their bedroom, he says, and he read in the letter that the edict was he was to have his head chopped off. He said, I always hated going to that school where they taught me how to write like a king, because he was the son of a king. He said, I always hated it, but once, he said, for once in my life I could use it. And so I wrote like in the handwriting of a king, and I said that upon giving the letter, the bearers of the letter, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, should have their head chopped off. He said, I was excited to see what happened when they handed the letter to the King of England, and then he chopped off their heads, and then my plan was to come back to Denmark. The next day he said, pirates jumped us. I ended up on the pirate ship. They ended up sailing towards England with the letter, and I can't tell you what's going to happen next. At the end of the play, we'll hear Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. It, of course, becomes the famous title of a famous play written in the 20th century by a guy named Tom Stoppard, a play that maybe if we have time at the very end of our semester, we'll enjoy watching. And then during this, this second scene, it's made clear to Hamlet that there has been a wager that's been placed by the king in regards to a sword fight that's about to ensue between Hamlet and Laertes. Hamlet will say that he has a strange feeling, like something is wrong. He says, a man's life is no more than to say one, line 75 of 5-2. He says, but I am sorry, good Horatio, that to Laertes I forgot myself. For by the image of my cause I see the portraiture of his. It's like, for the first time it hits Hamlet. Maybe he is mad. Oh yeah, my killing Laertes' dad puts him in the exact same spot that I was in because my dad got killed. I'm going to ask his favor. Basically, he says, I'm going to say sorry to him. As if somehow sorry is going to make up for all of the insanity, right? He's, all this chaos that he's created. Finally, Hamlet and Horatio have a conversation where Horatio will say to him, if your mind, I'm at line 227 or so, if your mind dislike anything, obey it. He's talking about this fight with Laertes. He says, I will forestall their repair hither and say you're not fit. In other words, Horatio says, dude, you do not have to go and do this sword fight with Laertes if you feel bad about it. Look at what Hamlet says at lines 230 and following. Not a whit. He says, no way, don't call it off. We defy augury. Augury here meaning foreboding, bad feeling. I have a bad feeling this morning about all this snow falling outside and coming to school. Maybe something bad could happen to me, but I don't care, I'm going to do it anyway. We defy augury. Then notice what's next. There's a special providence in the fall of a sparrow. If it be not now, 'tis to come. If it be not to come, it will be now. If it be not now, yet it will come. And then the famous line, the readiness is all. Now this is an interesting movement from Act 3 in the to be or not to be soliloquy, thus conscience makes cowards of us all. Notice, Hamlet is now ready to do the next deed, whatever that is. He says the readiness is all. In other words, you just got to be ready for stuff to happen because stuff's going to happen. And that's just the way that it has to be. Onto the stage then will come the rest of the entourage. The king, the queen, and the rest of them. The end of this play comes quickly. Laertes and Hamlet begin to fight. But before they do so, the king will take a pearl, which is of course poison. He'll drop it into a cup. Before he drops it into the cup, he'll drink. Then he'll drop it into the cup. This was not unusual. And then if his stepson drinks all the way to the end, he'll have the pearl as a gift. The king then will say, I hope everything goes well. They start to sword fight. Hamlet's better than Laertes. He gets the first touch. The queen comes down and says, Hamlet, have a drink. Hamlet's response is, no, set the cup by a while, I'll drink later. And then the queen says, I want to have a toast for you. And she raises the cup to make a toast for her son. It's at this moment that the audience is watching multiple people. Of course, think about it. Who knows that there's poison in the cup? Obviously, Claudius. Laertes also knows that there's poison in the cup. There's two people on that stage that could say to Mama, don't drink from the cup. All King says is, Gertrude, don't drink. She looks back at him like, don't tell me what to do. Which is interesting because if she had obeyed him, her life would be spared. She takes a drink, she sets it by. Of course, now the next part. Laertes has had enough of this, and so he goes up and nicks Hamlet. In the moment of nicking or cutting Hamlet, it's done, it's over. Hamlet doesn't know that. Hamlet, however, is torqued off that Laertes did this without proper form. In other words, it was in the break. And so Hamlet just turns around and they start to grapple. Both swords will fall on the floor. This is hard to imagine if you're just listening. They both pick up swords and Hamlet just pays back Laertes. The moment Laertes is cut, he immediately knows that in this falling of the swords, Hamlet picked up Laertes' sword, the one with the poison on the blade, and the minute Laertes is cut, the burning sensation tells him, oh man, I just got poisoned as well. They're both now doomed to die. In the meantime, Gertrude is sitting up on the throne, and she starts to slowly, or quickly, however you wish to say it, begins to die. She starts to grab for her throat, and then she gets ready to faint. Of course, you're watching multiple things happening simultaneously at the end of the play. Because as an audience member, you kind of already know what's going on. You're watching, obviously, the queen start to jerk around up there because the poison's starting to affect her, but you're also watching the king, who's kind of watching her and then watching what's going on, hoping that she will quickly die before something goes bad. And of course, Hamlet himself gets jacked as well. The king will say the queen swoons or faints to see them bleed, and then it's Laertes who will say, no, it ain't blood. Hamlet, there's something up. In the meantime, the queen will say, it's the drink, what's up with this drink? Laertes will confide, the poison is in the cup, it's also on the blade you have in your hand, and the king is to blame. Early on, in Act 4, the king had said to Laertes, let the great axe fall where it may on whoever is at fault. He was talking, of course, about Hamlet. The great axe does fall. Hamlet will take the sword. He will drive the sword into the king's abdomen. The poison will begin to do its job. He will take the drink that is also poison, and he'll pour it down the king's throat, so the king gets double whammy of poison, and off he goes. He's gone. In the meantime, Laertes has to tell Hamlet, you and I both are dead. We got poisoned. And to that degree, Laertes asks him for forgiveness. Hamlet will say, yeah, you got it. I forgive you. And then Laertes will go, leaving Hamlet now with his final words. Let's look at them. Hamlet will say that he has the final say. Now, Horatio will pick up a sword and get ready to fall on it. He says, I am more an antique Roman than a Dane. I'm not going to let my best friend die without me being there. We think, of course, at the very end of Julius Caesar, don't we? Hamlet's like, dude, you cannot kill yourself. Here's why. You have to tell what happened, right? To explain it all to everybody. Hamlet says, that as thou art a man, give me the cup. Let go by heaven, I'll have it. O God, Horatio, what a wounded name thing standing thus unknown shall leave behind me. In other words, I got a bad rep, man, if you don't somehow solve this problem. If you didst ever hold me in thy heart, which is similar to what his father said to him, right, as the ghost, absent thee from felicity a while, and in this harsh world draw thy breath in pain to tell my story. In other words, dude, you got to stay alive long enough to tell people what really went down. What We're Like Noise is this, and then we're told that young Fortinbras has shown up. Hamlet will then hand over the kingdom to young Fortinbras. Again, this is kind of edited out of a lot of performances of the play. If they want to shorten the play, they take out this Fortinbras thing. Shakespeare, it's a big dog deal, though. Hello, everybody who could run the country's died. Hamlet's about to die. The obvious question, politically speaking, is who's going to run Denmark once Hamlet's dead? Hamlet will turn over the kingdom to the young Fortinbras. In the meantime, Hamlet will say, oh, I die, Horatio. Last words of Hamlet, take a look at it. The potent poison quite o'ercrows my spirit. I cannot live to hear the news from England, but I do prophesy the election lights on Fortinbras. In other words, the young kid's going to take over. He has my dying voice, so tell him with the occurrence more or less, which has solicited the rest is silence. Much is made of this, the rest is silence line. Maybe Hamlet is suggesting, don't say anything else about my mom. Keep her reputation clean and all of that. Horatio will say, as Hamlet dies, now cracks a noble heart. And then, of course, the famous lines, good night, sweet prince. And then onto the stage will come the ambassadors from England to report Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. And there's all kinds of dead bodies lying all over the stage. In the end of this play, lots and lots of dead bodies. All right, let's now go to it 5-1, and we'll just listen now to Act 5 of Hamlet, all right?
That's true. Turns out trying to drag not good. Stuck till mid-July.
I don't know what to do.
Hey guys, I really